This is not a good night for Donald Trump, and I'll tell you why. We now have the unsealed charges in this charging document known as an indictment, right? They are against the Trump Organization and its main money man. And they tell quite a story. Most troubling for the former president isn't what's in these pages. It's that this story reads like it's just one chapter, and there could be more to come. In fact, the New York Attorney General basically told us as much today. So here's what we know now. The Trump Organization effectively is Donald Trump, okay? It is charged with 10 felonies. A scheme starting back in 2005 to defraud federal, state, and city tax collectors, okay? 15 years worth, equating to 15 felony counts against the Trump Organization's CFO, Alan Weisselberg, both for what he allowed himself to receive, allegedly wrongly, and what he paid out to others. The question is, did Weisselberg sign the checks? The answer is no. So therefore, what did the man who did sign them, Donald Trump, know? Who would know the answer to that? Alan Weisselberg. That now draws attention to the main question. Can prosecutors put enough pressure on Mr. Weisselberg to have him tell the truth about Donald Trump that he hasn't told already, if the truth is in fact illegal? Conspiracy, grand larceny, falsifying business records, criminal tax fraud. No joke. But I will be straight with you. These charges on their face don't blow me away. Any time in prison is something that would scare any of us, and rightly so. But even in the first degree, this isn't what some expected 2 years of earnest effort from the New York DA and the Attorney General to yield. But again, it may not be the whole story. In the main, prosecutors accuse the Trump Organization of giving Weisselberg some $1.67 million in untaxed compensation, meaning he cheated the government at different levels out of about $900,000 and falsely claimed more than $133,000 in refunds he wasn't entitled to. He also allowed himself to be paid in this alleged scheme off the books as a self-employed person by different Trump entities. Now, this gets a little bit into the weeds, but I think it's worth explaining it to you so that you can kind of get your arms around how dedicated prosecutors believe Trump folk were to avoiding the law, which is, you know what a Keogh plan is? It's named after this lawmaker from the 70s named Eugene Keogh. He came up with the idea of letting self-employed people and businesses that aren't incorporated have their own benefit programs, contribution benefit programs or defined benefit programs, retirement programs. Weisselberg, they say, was allowing himself to be paid by certain entities connected to the Trump org as self-employed, even though he wasn't. He was working for the Trump Organization. And that enabled him to exempt certain amounts of money that he could then put into his retirement plan. You see what I'm saying? That extended to him and, quote, other executives. What other executives? Member of the Trump family? Trump himself? We don't know. They're not named. But we do know that Weisselberg's kids are involved because they are explained as family, as people who derive benefit that the government, these prosecutors say, is wrongful. Now that's key, because if the kids are brought into play, what will that mean for Weisselberg in terms of what he's willing to speak about? Weisselberg and the Trump Organization pleaded not guilty. So, some of the questions. Where does it go? We're not going to know. And it's really hard to suggest from this. And even if you look at different cases of this nature, it's hard to tell where the path will go. Tish James, the Attorney General of New York, says we'll go where the facts lead us. We'll follow the facts. Okay, we don't know, but she doesn't have to tell us either. Unindicted co-conspirator number 1. Who is that? Also implicated in the alleged scheme. A source now tells CNN it is Trump Organization controller Jeff McConney, who recently testified before the grand jury in New York. Those called before a state grand jury get what's called transactional immunity, means you won't get prosecuted for their testimony unless they lie. Now, that's always the case. If you lie, the immunity deal goes away. So what is Trump's response? No surprise. He doesn't discuss the merits. He doesn't give any plausible deniability. He doesn't define what the action was and why it's okay. He goes right to division. These are Democrats. It's a witch hunt. It's about dividing the country. But think about it. If he didn't do any of this, if he didn't know anything about this, why doesn't he say that? Why doesn't he argue the merits? Why doesn't he tell you what the government is getting wrong? Think about that. His attorneys allege that this has never happened before. Nobody's ever gone after anybody like this. Listen.
These charges are unprecedented. These cases are always resolved in the civil context. The IRS has never made a case like this. If the name of the company was something else, I don't think these charges would have been brought.
True-ish. What does that mean? It's either true or not. No, it's about degree. Cases like this, not paying taxes, are often settled, are often held to the civil and pled out. You come up with a deal, you settle it. But what about when you refuse to? What about when you refuse to work with the government? The IRS or the DA has never gone after people for tax fraud? Of course they have, especially when they're non-compliant, as is the case here. You're going to hear tonight from someone who helped prosecutors bring these serious charges. We've got three different angles to come at you with this. One is somebody who prosecuted Trump before at the AG level. What does he see in this, in the thinking and the pattern of behavior? Important. Then we have someone who worked at the Trump organization. Do these charges smack familiar of what she saw going on there? And what did she know about who knew what about these types of schemes as alleged? And then we have the ex-wife of one of the Weisselberg sons. What does she remember about how benefits to her family were explained? Much better minds. Let's start with former Assistant New York Attorney General Tristan Snell. Led the investigation of Trump University. He is joined by the one and only Norm Eisen, former White House ethics czar and counsel to Democrats in Trump's first impeachment trial. First to you, Brother Snell. When you read this indictment, what is your reaction about whether or not this is the beginning or the end, and what the depth of concern should be for those named and unnamed?
Oh, there are a lot of interesting little bits to this that they've gotten some attention. They should get more. I think the one that leapt out at me the most, there was the discussion of altering documents, but it was what document it was. It was the Donald J. Trump detailed general ledger they reference in this indictment. What is that? What is that? Does this mean that he had his own special set of books that then he reviewed with Weisselberg? I mean, if so, that's potentially a absolutely critical document in this whole case. So that's just one thing to start with. I have other thoughts beyond that, but that's one of the ones that I'm really fixating on right now. Is I really want to see what the heck is in that ledger.
All right, so I'm going to come back to you in a second. Norm, let's play the reciprocal angle here. Is with 2 years, this is all you got? Is that the guy didn't pay some taxes, 900 grand worth of taxes? You think he's going to go bad on Trump over $900,000? I'm not impressed. What do you say?
Well, Chris, I say 15, 15, 15. You have 15 felony counts in this indictment. You have a scheme that went on for 15 years, and you have a potential maximum penalty for these charges for Mr. Weisselberg of 15 years. We talked about this earlier in the week. I thought it was going to be more serious than people believe. This is a very deeply detailed, it'll be very compelling to a jury. It's a story of a greedy CFO who profited over $1.7 million, big city New York apartments, luxury cars, Mercedes-Benz, a private school tuition, and a thoroughly corrupt company. And the indictment is full of tidbits. One of my favorites was, and this is what the DA fought so hard for, twice to the Supreme Court, Chris. We often talked about it. The Trump organization internally tracked and treated these fringe benefits as part of Weisselberg's annual compensation. This is on page 13. And the corporate defendants falsified other compensation records. Chris, 2 sets of books. This is going to be a devastating jury case, and I think Weisselberg is flinching, and he's going to have to very seriously rethink whether it's time for him to start cooperating. Donald Trump's worst nightmare.
Tristan Snell, what is the best case scenario for how the former president would be implicated in this when you know the defense? Weisselberg did what he did. I didn't know. I signed the checks. I'm the face of the organization. I'm out bringing us in new business. I'm not keeping the books. That was him. Whatever happened wrong is on him.
I think the kicker there is it's going to be a whole puzzle that you have to put together. Now, you can get a whole lot more of the pieces of the puzzle dumped onto the table all at once if Weisselberg cooperates. But if he doesn't, then the rest of it comes down to this ledger, all of the different versions of it. In this indictment, just this little bit of the broader case, we've now gotten a glimpse of this where they doctored it. There was a notation in there, and then Weisselberg asked that it be taken out. But all of those little edits that you make to a document, all of that metadata is stuff that then gets recorded. You know when documents were created. You can see emails and how they reflect on a meeting. Someone taking notes during a meeting, and you know what date that document was created, so you know it was created during the meeting. If it was created during the meeting, it's potentially admissible as evidence. There's a whole lot of things that you can do here to piece this together that don't necessarily involve Weisselberg flipping, although Weisselberg flipping sure makes it a lot easier.
Right. Norm, do you think it's fair? Interesting. The president didn't say, "How dare that Weisselberg?" or "I didn't know anything about this." He just went right to the politics. And the flip play on that from his lawyer is, no one ever has been prosecuted for something like this before. These cases are always settled. This is political. Your take on that?
Well, Chris, in our big Brookings report, we laid out all the defenses. We predicted the president and those around him would go there. My take is it's a devastating indictment. Now the evidence will have to be proved up before the judge and a jury, but if it's proved up and the company is unrepentant and its namesake Donald Trump is attacking this, refusing to admit anything was wrong, that is going to be something that will weigh heavily at sentencing. It won't work with a jury, Chris, because they've told a very compelling story here. Again, they have to prove it. These are just allegations. But if they prove this, it's a story of greed in a corporation, corruption in a corporation, theft from the taxpayers, grand larceny, from the members of the jury, the New York State taxpayers, to fund these luxury benefits, over $1.7 million. So I think that the prosecution has got an even better story to tell than Trump's tired witch hunt narrative, but we'll find out in court.
Very good points from Tristan Snell and Norm Eisen. Thank you.